This journey started a long time ago, when my oldest was 5 years old. And I never thought to be an author. I liked storytelling. I liked telling them and making up stories for my kids, but I never thought that I would create stories. But one night, my 5-year-old had a nightmare that her sister was walking across the bridge, which she was less than 1 year old, and she fell into the river and she couldn't save her. And I stayed up all night with her. She laid beside her sister, calmed her down, and she went to sleep. And the next night, obviously, I dreamt about a young elf girl falling off a bridge into the river. And I had to know what happened to her. So when I woke up, I wrote this dream down. And I started telling her story. What happened to her after she fell into the water? Why did she fall into the water? And I started writing all these stories about this elf girl. And then, as my kids got older, I would speak Ojibwe to them. I'd speak Anishinaabe, and I would speak for half hour at a time or more. And anytime I would talk to them, sometimes they would go, oh my goodness. So it made me want to put my language into a book. And when I put my language into a book and I read them the story and they liked the story about elves and dragons with Ojibwe, when my youngest was about 5 or 6, that it was about 4 to 6 years later, she come up to me and she said, well, how do you say arrow? And I said, Bikwak. And she said, okay. And she goes, Bikwak, Bikwak, Bikwak. And she runs out the door. And she, screaming it out the door, she's holding up this stick. And she says, Bikwak, I said the magic word. It's a magic arrow. And now all the enemies are defeated, or something like that. And writing these stories in the language made our language magic to them. And we still struggle today to speak to each other, but I think they see the value of the language, and that's what started the whole journey to writing these books and to creating stories filled with elves and dragons and Anishinaabe and culture and just everything blended together. So after I wrote all those stories about the elf girl who fell into the river, I had to know exactly what happened to her and how it all started. So that's how this series came to be. And I'm happy with the way they came out. I can say that over the past 10 years, my 12 years, my writing has definitely grown and changed. And they've grown and changed with my children, because then I started adding in Lakota. And this series here is Lakota. And there's 3 more of these books that are still being. So when I say the Light Chronicles, that's this series. And we're on Light Chronicles 4. That's what we're editing, getting the book cover done so that we can publish it this year, so that this series will be completed. And the series has grown with my children. The first series was very young adult, a little bit darker. And then now I'm writing some adult ones and new adult books and some older young adult books. So they kind of grew with my kids as my kids aged, my books aged. But so speaking of creating stories, it's time to start creating more.